what happens when you shock your system, when you have a concussion, is that there's this very delicate gland in the brain called the pituitary gland. And it's so delicate that it hangs inside of a cavern of space that has to be cooled. There's an air conditioning unit, in a sense, in our brain that keeps it at a certain temperature. And if that pituitary gland gets the wrong temperature, if it heats up, it produces the wrong messages to produce brain chemicals. You could get in a car accident, shock your spine, or have a concussion, and knock that pituitary gland and tilt it with inflammation. The rest of your life, you'll feel a sense of anxiety. You could become neurotic. You can become depressed. You can experience sleeplessness, all because of a concussion. And of course, in medical science, in Western science, all we know is keep somebody awake, because if they fall asleep, they might not come up and they may not wake up. It's like nothing. Medical science has nothing for concussions except to keep you from dying. The reality is there's over 50 different types of remedies in homeopathy for concussion, if you look in the books. Now, homeopathy is a 250-year-old science, long before drugs came along in Europe. In homeopathy, one of the most critical things you can remedy is a concussion. Now, your child's out playing soccer and they get knocked, that ball hits their head, whether they have a concussion or not, it could cause inflammation in the brain. If they actually have a concussion, that can affect them the rest of their life. As a matter of fact, it could affect them a little bit now, and 50 years later it can affect you. So many people with upsets and problems and possibly even dementia and Alzheimer's could all be starting from an earlier injury. Well, these things that come from concussion can affect you the rest of your life or can show up later in life. So you might have fallen off the bed as a child when you were 8 months old, and then suddenly at 40 years old you're experiencing yourself anxiety and depression, or at sixth grade going in the junior high, suddenly anxiety is triggered. Where did this come from? It came from that little concussion, that little bang that you got when you were a child, or when you were playing, or in a car accident, or falling off a bicycle, or falling out of a tree. These things affect us hugely. Now, when I was in second grade, I did fall out of a tree head first and broke both arms. Bones were sticking out of my arms. Clearly, there was a concussion. And, then from that point on, there was a turning point. Nobody ever thought it had anything to do with that injury. But the turning point is that I suddenly started experiencing anxiety. Now, where did that anxiety come from? I didn't have it before, and suddenly I had it then. It was the pituitary gland was just simply inflamed. And I worked on things and did things the rest of my life, but there was always this current of anxiety. Well, at a certain point, I learned about concussions, realized that I'd had one, and I went and did a homeopathic treatment for concussions. It was Dr. Solar Fairmond who focuses on this brain treatment, which is simply a few little bottles. It was like $200 or something, very inexpensive, and a few little bottles of these little tiny homeopathic pills, one this night, one another night, one another time, and it's his brain formula. I was blown away. It had a huge impact on clarity of thinking, being sort of, one of the ways of expressing is I found my resting place. The brain could just relax. I could just go in that place of complete relaxation. It was a shift. It was like a veil had lifted off of me. An old injury had been remedied by this amazing homeopathic treatment. And Dr. Fairmont put together these different homeopathic remedies, arnica being one, gold being another one, homeopathic gold, albium is that remedy, and another one, plus a few other things, put together in a program that he feels actually works for all different kinds of concussions. And I had testimonials. I wrote about it in one of my books called The Mars and Venus Diet and Exercise Solution. As a result of that, people read that book. They went to him. They got better. I got testimonials from it. It was amazing to me. Now, my belief is homeopathy works better if you're also getting the right nutrition in your life. But what homeopathy does is it triggers the brain with the information it needs to heal certain specific conditions. But if you don't have the nutrients and the support, it may not work as well. But one of the testimonials I got was a woman who won gold medals in the Olympics. And you see her out there looking beautiful, doing the dancing on the ice skating, and yet she was completely unable to go out in public alone. She had dramatic inflammation in her body, so she was in pain all the time. All the time she's falling down in that practice. She had many, many concussions, doing all those fancy things that they do on ice skates. She had horrible health conditions. Psychologically, she couldn't sleep at night. She had nightmares. She was afraid of people. She had, all these phobias. And where did it come from? And yet you saw her out there and she was spectacular. I mean, she was a champion, but her life was miserable. She couldn't even get in a car without feeling anxiety, couldn't go on airplanes without huge anxiety, having to take sedatives. And after she did 3 different treatments of this same program, she did it and got better, she did it again and got better. It's like a 2-month program, and did it the 3rd time. All of that cleared up. And she wrote to me and thanked me for writing about it in my book. So that's probably the most dramatic of all that I've heard. But basically, if your child or you have had a concussion and you notice that you have problems that have to do with dopamine function or serotonin function. Serotonin function would be mood swings, inhibited dopamine function would be lack of motivation, depression, it would be addiction. You know, you see these poor people who are addicted. They're sick, they're not criminals. We shouldn't be putting them in jail. We should be giving them treatment to restore healthy brain function so they can make dopamine without taking the drug. And often they've had some kind of accident or been in a fight. You know, you see what people do in fights, you know, banging them up, banging the head on the ground, hitting them in the face, you know, boxers, NFL players, they're all depressed. They all have all these problems later because this inflammation gets in there and it doesn't go away. And the homeopathic remedies help stimulate the brain, help stimulate the body, the immune system in order to restore healing and normalization. So this is an amazing treatment to use homeopathy for concussion. And certainly if you're not going to go to Dr. Fairmont, he's passed on, this is his formula, it's passed on to another generation. His son, Dr. Farzad Fairmont, they provide that treatment for people. You can get it online. It's a great treatment. But I'd have you then look up Dr. Farzad Fairmont and get that treatment because it's so non-invasive, it's so basic, and make sure that inflammation doesn't stay there for a lifetime. So your child's brain or your brain can continue to develop the way it's designed to develop so you can have the optimal function of the brain that you deserve, so you can have better relationships, so you can be happy, so you can have love, and you can be healthy for a lifetime, and you deserve it.